All right, Alex, good to meet you, mate.
How you doing, Raja?
Yeah, good, very good. So thanks for meeting with us today. Obviously our living arrangements have come to a point where we can't just keep, arguing at each other,
Yeah.
and we obviously need to find a solution to what's going on here because obviously things have escalated to a point where
Yeah, no,
we need a solution.
I'll agree with this. I'm going to say first, I think we're both respectable men.
Mm-hmm.
I think it shouldn't be that hard to come to a solution that
I agree.
could benefit us both.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a good thing to start off here and then start off at a respectable point so we can have a good solution. So
Yeah, I was going to say, adding on to that, none of us want, or neither of us want Jane pushing any more pressure on us because she's
Yeah.
obviously given us our ultimatum of, sort this
yeah,
out
no,
or
that's
get
very
kicked
scary. Yeah.
out. Neither of us want the police keep coming around again. I'm a bit over them coming talking to me, and I'm sure you're probably sick of them
Calling,
or
yeah,
calling
no, I don't want to
you
have
calling
to do all
them.
this every week.
I'm sure Jane also doesn't want having a continuous sort of police presence at her place because it's her investment property, and
It's not good bringing
it's not good.
into this,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, good start. So, straight off the bat, why don't you just tell me what you want to get from it? What are some of the problems that you see that are causing this?
Well, yeah, my first main issue that arises from this whole situation is I've been doing a manuscript for some time now, and my deadline is just coming up in 2 weeks, and I've been working on it for a while, and I've had a pretty steady pace, and I've been able to figure out that I should be pretty much done by then if I'm able to get it done in my peace and quiet and listen to my classical music. And have all this, but with you playing music and practicing your guitar very loudly all day, obviously I've figured out it's going to take me another 2 weeks, and this can cause me a lot of problems, and it's just not something I don't think I can handle financially. And yeah, it's just going to be a big issue going forward if I'm not able to just get this time to myself to be able to understand, to properly finish this and do my work well.
Yep, I get that. There's lots of, obviously there are lots of already said demands that you are saying. There's obviously lots of underlying things, like working from a deadline, having monetary, penalties if, financial penalties if you don't get this in on time, just the stress of, the possibility of being kicked out of your own home, it's all stress that adds onto it. I understand that. But yeah, that's good.
What are the issues you're having as well? I want to try and understand yours better because I haven't really been able to properly understand them while trying to figure out our solution for this problem, and it's something I really need to probably think I understand and help us better with coming to a solution.
Well, obviously, like we just said, we're both working under a sort of a deadline now. I have a tour coming up in sort of 3 weeks' time. That I need to be able to be playing at my absolute best, have everything sort of down to a T, making sure everything's sounding perfect, and that's why I've been practicing sort of flat out, and that's why I need to keep practicing, because if my own performance is sort of lacking, then it not only affects me but also the band, because obviously we play as a group. If we're not able to keep having tours going and money coming in, this is how we make our living. That not only affects myself but obviously everyone else, and that's just not a situation that I want to be in where I'll be letting down my own sort of group almost. And that
makes a lot of sense. I agree with that, and I feel like one of the things we can talk about a lot to understand and get this problem better would be how we both have time off in a certain amount of period. Noticing that you are going on your tour in 3 weeks, and I think this is only for a week. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, no, only for a week, and they're coming back for another 2, and then leaving for good.
Yep.
I'm going to be leaving within 2 weeks to go on a holiday, and I think this means that the only real problem we'll have is for the next 2 weeks.
Yep.
So our main solution, if we can figure out something to do for the next 2 weeks, I think we can pretty much be sorted for the rest of the time we'll be living together.
Yeah, I agree, because like I said, I'm not staying on long term, but you're obviously the one who is going to be impacted more by the long term effects of this. So whilst immediately we both have some issues and demands that we want to have sorted out. But in the long term, obviously, your situation is a bit more dependent on what happens to you. So yeah, it's good to get this stuff. All right. So now that we understand, I can see where you're coming from. You have all these underlying interests. Like your deadline. You're obviously on quite a tight constraint, all this sort of thing. Being the one who's not, being so immediately affected by this, why don't you give me, sort of what you think could be your best solution to all this at the moment, considering all those other circumstances?
Well, if I were to think about my best solution, there's the obvious, which is you moving out.
Right.
But I don't think that's going to be a very easy and well done, easy solution to come up with.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the next one, which I think could actually benefit both of us, would be for you to work with instead of working at home, work out of home, work with your bandmates, work somewhere that isn't directly in the house. And it's just a solution that could benefit like both of us, very simply.
I see where you're coming from with that. There's obviously that's probably most ideal, but also that doesn't really help me either, because as much as it sounds easy enough to just move out and go play there's also quite a lot of restraints with that. It's quite impractical for me to pick up all my gear and have to move around. It's also quite challenging to then find a time for all of us to meet every day for X amount of hours in the same spot to then practice, because that just doesn't always happen because everybody has their own lives. That then requires somewhere for us to find a place to be able to practice. If that's another financial cost to add on to that we might have to rent out a place or something, that's another cost that I can't afford at the moment. It's, from my point of view, it seems to be more easier and sort of more convenient for you, being the one who is just writing and sort of doing your work from home, to be the one who removes yourself from the situation, just purely because of where I'm seeing that from. But obviously that's not how it's going to work.
Well, obviously that makes sense. Like the monetary issues and all of that, and all of that, I feel like we could come to a thing where we would work together, but working out of home also isn't really a solution for me, because I've tried to work in libraries before. Obviously, the same amount of work I can get done in 6 hours at home takes twice as long. I'm distracted. There are other things going around me, and within my own office, in my room, in my house, it's a very secluded, very just me environment, and it works really well for me.
Yep.
And I think I just don't think I can really that's one of the hardest things for me to compromise on.
Right.
But that's the thing, because it's less about having my apartment, it's more about having my own space.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And that's something I feel like maybe we could talk about a bit more.
Yeah, sure. Because from my point of view, like I just said, it seems to be the most practical and sort of reasonable option for you to then, because you have all these, everything else going on, like the deadline, not being able to pay, rent coming up, your holiday coming up. It seems to be that the one, you being the person who is raising all these issues, to be the one to then remove yourself from that. But obviously with all these other things going on, I can see that it's probably not possible for you. But in saying that, surely we can, like you said, find a compromise to these things.
Well, the first thing, obviously it's the sound that's one of the biggest problems, and I have a big problem with is obviously just how loud it is.
Yeah, right.
I think that's something that we need to discuss and think of, because we could come up with a solution to that. I feel like a lot of the other problems will be solved.
So what, in your terms, what do you think could be a good way to sort of judge, how loud, or what sort of hours during the day that could be good for you?
So I think that's the big thing. We could talk about hours that we could work about together. We could, because I don't think you need to be practicing from 7:30 to 10:30 every day.
Of course, yeah.
And I obviously don't need to be doing 15 hours of work a day either. We both only need a few hours, and this could be something we can solve it. But
yep.
Obviously, I have it's just hard to come up with something like this. So talking about it, like one of the solutions I think could be like you moving to the other side of your apartment, having this. Like I think we have had this before. Like I can work harder and work better and do finish my work not as quickly, but I will finish it. I hopefully finish it, including more time. If you do that, but I feel like, is there any arguments to that?
Well, that's a good point. You know, I do like to practice, you know, around different parts of the house, and obviously because the apartments are quite almost exactly identical in their layout, you working from your living room is down one end of the house, and if you know, I could possibly start playing and practicing more from my room, which is at the other end of the house, so that we have, you know, the most amount of sort of physical separation between us, which can reduce the noise and like the distraction that gets put on you. That also sort of doesn't affect me that much, so that could be something that we could talk about.
Well, obviously one of the solutions could just be you moving back, like playing your guitar and your music in the opposite room, because where the houses are separated, why don't you play the music in the back in your room?
Yeah, I get that, but also because, you know, I don't want to have to feel as if I have these constraints within my own house that I have to be, you know, in this particular part to be able to play. You know, I like to move around. You know, it makes my creative juices sort of flow, and it helps my creative genius to be able to, you know, produce what I do, and, you know, keep my music sort of flowing from that point of view. You know, and like I said, I don't feel as if I should be sort of restrained just to one particular part of the house, sort of thing.
Well, if that's something you're not really looking to compromise on, how about my second solution would obviously just be to have headphones plugged into your guitar instead of an amp, which just means you wouldn't have, like, obviously there'd just be no sound coming through, and I would be able to do my work, and it'd be fine. Like, it would be very fine.
I mean, I get the headphones, but also, like I was saying, it doesn't give me the same sort of feel. Like from a music standpoint, you know, you like to be able to feel the sort of music coming through. You like feel it through the walls, and it just gives you that sort of overall feel of what you're creating is, you know, what you want it to be. And I just don't think having headphones on gives me that same sort of satisfaction or you know, that peace of mind that, you know, this is how I want it to be, and, you know, how that sort of sounds.
Yeah. Well, obviously there's some problems here, and like the easiest solution would be for one of us to move out. My biggest problem is there's a lot of monetary issues that come with that, because I don't have the money. So I feel like one of the best things we could do is try sort out a solution where we work together and one of us moves out while the other either helps, or we talk to the landlord about a rejected payment. Like,
I was going to say, because obviously the noise, you are the one who has brought up all the complaints about the noise and it's affecting your works, you know, and like I was saying previously, because you have, you know, the more immediate effects of, you know, riding on the outcome of this, why don't you, being the one who is coming to me with this, why don't you just remove yourself from the situation? Like, is that not a possible solution?
Well, the way I see that is, as well, I also see the fact that I'm here on a long-term lease. You're only here for another 6 weeks. I feel when it comes to those 4 weeks, I'll get much more likely to be given the benefit of the doubt in this situation, and be given a solution where I'll be able to stay on, because I'm not the one causing all the problems, and I'm not the one doing this. Although I don't know that at the moment, this should be, because I don't know if that's 100% true, we should talk to the landlord and see, maybe I could talk to the landlord and see if there's a way to figure out a late payment system, or like a system where we're able to talk, where I'm able to pay after these 2 weeks, and I get my manuscript done, because if I do get hit with those 2 weeks deadlines, it will make sure I'm not able to probably pay rent and not go on holiday, which would cause me a lot more problems. So if there is a way to talk it out with her, that would be better, but I think the first solution would just be like getting a bit of help financially from you, because it doesn't actually just affect me. With you not being able to you'll have to find a new place for 2 weeks as well, because we'll have to find a new place for 2 weeks, you have to spend more money on that, and it won't be easy. So it means just being able to work for, if you be able to help me subsidize this 2 weeks, that means I won't have the same restraints. I won't be annoying you before your holiday, and you won't have to pay for rented a whole new place for the last 2 weeks of your before you move and go on tour.
Look, obviously that adding another financial stress onto the top of this isn't ideal, but obviously given the circumstances of me not being on long term and the fact that you have this sort of 2 week deadline come up quite quickly, it is possibly something that I could look into just for the short term, because like you said, if you are hit with these, you know, financial penalties for not giving in your manuscript on time, you know, it leaves you with less money to then pay rent, and that's something that I'm sure Jane would not be happy about either way. So something like maybe me working out at some sort of payment option where I, you know, possibly help with your pay with the rent for the next few weeks, just to see you through that. Or like you said, we could talk to Jane about possibly working out some sort of payment option where you can pay her after the fact, which would require a lot of sort of trust between you and her. But as I said, it's just for the short term, so I'm sure that is possibly something we could maybe think about. Yep.
No, that sounds like a good solution. I feel like we can come to proper terms with this, or talk to Jane about it first and have her come up with the allowance and the final details and everything. It sounds like a good way to make a deal and good agreement to come to.
And yeah, like I said, it's not something that I'd, you know, spending my own money on like a neighbour's rent is not something that I would be completely, you know, solid about. But if it means that I'm then able to still play my music without any of this sort of like police coming around again and Jane hassling, and if it means that you're able to get your work done and then continue on with your life and, you know, living comfortably in this house with Jane being the landlord, you know, it's something I'm sure we could probably work out.
Great, sounds amazing. We'll talk about this, Jane, and get back.
Good idea.
Cheers.